Welcome, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. Let me begin by thanking all of you for coming together and for being here with us today as we celebrate local solutions being implemented in small islands by ourselves, for ourselves. For me, this has always been very important in development that we try to get solutions that we ourselves can find the answers to. We should know that if we don't find the answers for ourselves, we know how slow other people are in getting those answers for us. That's all I'll say on that. Events like these are very important because they give a timely reminder for why we came to Glasgow in the first place, why we are here. We would like, and for whom we are fighting and for what. Food security. Food security and climate change are threatening to sort of rob us of our most basic need through no fault of our own, but the challenges breed resilience. We are fully much aware of island people of this, and there are heroes and heroines in our islands and our island communities who refuse to sit back simply and be consigned to being meek and to let the situation carry us. As a united bloc and the moral voice of these climate negotiations, the Alliance of Small Island States, AOSIS, we are committed to alleviating and to raising, we are committing to raising our voice, eliminating any challenges so that our voices are heard. We hear you, and we expect everyone to hear us. We will fight for the climate justice as we deserve, so that you are given the tools and the resources, my people, necessary to sustain and scale these initiatives, that we need to be innovative and we need to be calculating and to reach these things ourselves. We are much about self-determination in a lot of these. Nature-based solutions are deeply connected to community empowerment and leadership, and more particularly to our fisheries, including small-scale fisher folks. These are all important champions and implementers of nature-based solutions. Is that us? Yes? Oh, Jesus, sorry? Oh, okay. Jesus made his people fishers of men. And I believe that we here, we all play similar roles, and we become in inspiring the change that here so that we can feel the need of our world and make us grapple with this crisis in a way that is required for us to become self-sufficient, our own fisher folks. So with that, my friends, I salute you, and I proudly stand with you and raise the voice of AOSIS as we bring the voice of communities, some virtually and some who have traversed a long way. I look forward to the evening and to sharing the inspiration that you will share with everyone. I thank you.
Thank you for your great words, Ambassador. And now we have a special message, virtual message from Mr. Liu Zenmin, Under Secretary General of UNDESA.
Excellencies, distinguished panelists, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm pleased to participate in this important event. The well-being of our seas and their people depends first and foremost on national actions. At the same time, there is an urgent need to enable strong, genuine, and durable partnerships at all levels to enhance international cooperation and to address the unique vulnerabilities of seas so as to ensure their sustainable development. Today's event is the second in a series of Island Bright Sports events, co-organized together with GRISPA and other partners. It will showcase nature-based solutions, contribution to climate adaptation benefits for improved fisheries and food security in seas. The interesting projects and stories we will hear today all underscore the importance of partnerships. We should not underestimate the tremendous value of partnerships and initiatives such as RARE, the Resilient Islands Project, Project Biodiversity, and Charles Rodriguez. We should learn from these first-hand perspectives and nature-based approaches to seas issues. Indeed, partnerships are the key pathway to achieving transformation. They greatly assist in generating the magnitude of resources needed for implementing bold and resilience-building reforms. Wherever possible, new partnerships must be encouraged and scaled up. UNDESA is committed to the scaling up of partnerships for seas through the 2030 Agenda Partnerships Accelerator. We seek to enhance collaboration among all stakeholders. This is with a view to supporting or enabling partnership ecosystem in seas and other countries. Dear colleagues, implementation of both the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Smart Pathway is critical to addressing the devastating impacts of climate change. Yet, we cannot ignore its unrelenting pace. Regrettably, we are on track for catastrophic temperature rise of 3 to 5 degrees centigrade this century. It will have tremendous adverse impacts on lives, livelihoods, and communities across the world, but especially in seas. Excellencies, as the Secretariat of the United Nations Steering Committee on Seas Partnerships, UNDESA looks forward to engaging in the development and organization of the forthcoming United Nations Seas Partnerships Awards. This important initiative of the co-chairs of the steering committee will recognize the best practices in partnerships for seas, in accordance with paragraph 101 of the Smart Pathway and in line with the priorities of seas. Its objective is to recognize and reward the efforts of the most noteworthy and best genuine and durable partnerships for the sustainable development of seas. I congratulate each of the presenters of the bright sports today. They are the real champions of the transformative change, implementing nature-based solutions to improve fisheries and food security in seas. I look forward to today's discussion. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zenman. And now for our final opening speaker, we have Ms. Yoko Watanabe, a great friend of GLISPA and the global manager of the GEF UNDP Small Grants Program. They're our main partner for this Bright Spot series, and Yoko is joining us virtually, live from New York. So, Yoko, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Javal. Very nice to see everybody at this occasion at the COP26, having this Island Bright Spot event, the episode 2. on island climate change resilience issues and food security matters. Excellencies, colleagues, and friends, it's a really great honor to have this event at the AOSIS Pavilion today, and thank you very much for that partnership. The local communities and small island development states are least responsible for climate change, yet are the most vulnerable and suffer the most from its multidimensional impacts on economy, society, and environment. And over the past week at the COP and many other forums, SIDS through the island leaders, youth, civil society, indigenous peoples, and others have played a critical role to advocate for the urgent and ambitious climate action with specific focus on climate mitigation, adaptation, and resilience, and importantly, accelerating climate finance. And for SIDS, reducing emissions and maintaining global temperature rise below 1.5 degree is really a matter of survival. The compounding effects of the pandemic and the climate crisis have highlighted our shared vulnerabilities and responsibilities, and the fact that we can no longer wait and need to take immediate actions together. And the nature-based solutions that are socially inclusive and build healthy ecosystems that are resilient to shocks and stressors are not only critical in addressing the climate crisis, but also serves as the foundation for economic and human development. Enhancing resilience to climate change is an important component of this, and particularly across islands that depend on natural resources and traditional practices for livelihood. With these challenges in mind, the Global Environment Facility, the Small Grant Program, which is implemented by the United Nations Development Program, has again partnered with the Global Island Partnership, the GLISPA, and the Micronesia Conservation Trust on the Island Bright Spot Initiative to foster island-led local action into global coalition and dialogue like those at the COP. The Small Grant Program is active in 125 countries, including 36 SIDS, providing small but impactful financial and technical support to local communities, and particularly focusing with indigenous peoples, women's groups, youth, and persons with disability, and addressing the dire global environmental issues and sustainable development challenges for the past 3 decades. Building on the lessons learned from the SGP portfolio with over 25,000 community-based environmental projects, with investment over 650 million US dollars from GF and others, and then coupled by using the strong global island network through GRISPA, the aim of this initiative is to recognize and scale up and replicate these global good practices among the local communities and across islands, and bring the bright spot to these global dialogues. And the work will focus on global policy processes so that they can best illustrate the island needs and solutions and opportunities. And these initiatives will also focus on enhancing ambition, accelerating action, and commitment towards the implementation of multilateral environmental agreements such as the post-2020 Biodiversity Framework, the Paris Agreement, the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration, and importantly, the Sustainable Development Goals. And these partnerships will demonstrate real and tangible progress towards the SDGs and Samoa pathways, and connecting global leaders and local implementators in the range of islands that we work in. And the islands are often lacking institutional and systemic human capacity and resources to deal with these issues, and this is why it's so important that we bring all these actors together and learn from each other and scale up these work. And this is where island bright spots come in, and where we can invest further in these proven scalable solutions that have potential to be further scaled up around the globe and show as a sustainable island communities innovative partnership. And today's event, with this amazing panel of distinguished local and global leaders, we highlight some of the locally led inclusive natural-based solutions that shows climate resilience and contribute to the green and blue recovery in the SIDS. And the event will focus on the importance, particularly on the coastal and marine ecosystem as a source of natural resources, which is a base for our food security and livelihood for islanders. From Jamaica, Palau to Cape Verde and to Mauritius, we will hear from local leaders on the island blind spots. We will learn about various innovative and ambitious solutions that are being used and adopted to address the climate change and pandemic. And we really hope that through this GLISPA's partnership with Small Grants Program, we can scale up these initiatives further with all of you here at this event and beyond. And we look forward to the fruitful dialogue today. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and I can't wait to hear from all of you. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugo. Well, those opening speakers framed it exactly what this is about, so I don't want to waste any more time. I just want to get straight to the actual bright spot presentations because they're so great. And we're going to kick it off in Cabo Verde with Albert Taxonera, who is with a group of young conservationists, they created Project Biodiversity, an organization that operates in Cabo Verde and that aims at a world in which humans and nature thrive together. They implement conservation programs that promote a sustainable growth model, protecting Cabo Verde's natural ecosystems and biodiversity through community-based approaches. So, but Albert could explain it better than me, so without further ado, Albert. No?
Hello everybody, this is Albert from Poultry Farming, a local NGO located in Sal Island in Cabo Verde. Before anything, I want to thank the team of CRISPA for allowing us to be here with you guys in Glasgow in this important conference and to allow us to present our bright spot on Cabo Verde's artisanal fisheries. We're going to be talking about how we are doing to get the fishing communities more sustainable and resilient. So here is Cabo Verde. It's a little small island developing state, 500 kilometers off the coast of Dakar in West Africa. And on the left side, you can see Sal Island with its network of marine protected areas. So what is the impact of climate change on artisanal fisheries? The truth is that we don't know. We are not sure right now what is the impact, but we know what the future is waiting for us. So what we are doing is that we are building the resilience of those communities against climate change. And how we are doing that? You can see here 4 of the points that we are working towards. We are improving the management of the artisanal fisheries. We are making operational the marine protected areas that right now are being operational. We are also filling the knowledge gaps on marine megafauna, and we are working with authorities to make law enforcement more efficient. So we identified all these areas of intervention. We have the MPA of Sal Island. We have the communities. We have local fishers and fishmongers that are really in Cabo Verde. The fishmongers are a key stakeholder, key actor on the value chain of artisanal fishers. And then at the end, we have the consumers, the general public, the restaurants, etc. So we are working with these artisanal fisheries value chain. And how we do that? We developed 3 different programs that they work separately but at the same time together and very integrated. So we have the Guardians of the Sea, which is a network of fishers that joining together and joining efforts to make sure that the marine protected areas are looked after. Then we have the fishmongers, which are in the middle of the value chain, that are the ones that are selling, are buying the fish to fishers and are selling the fish to the restaurants. So they are like key actor in the middle of the value chain. So we are also working with them. And at the end, we work with consumers, which is basically restaurants and the general public. So with these 3 approaches, we are actually closing the circle, and we are making sure that the natural resources, fish stocks in this case, are well managed and they are not overfished. So more specifically, we have the Guardians of the Sea. Guardians of the Sea, as I said, is a program that engages with local fishers. We are working now with 40 fishers from 3 different communities and a total of 25 artisanal boats that join the network. So these guys, what they do is that under normal daily activities, they go out to fish. but at the same time that they are fishing, they are looking after marine megafauna, and they will record any sightings. But at the same time, they will be recording any infraction that they will see in the ocean. And they will report that to us, and at the same time, we report that to the authorities that are already partners with us in this program. So basically what we do is that we build their capacity with many trainings. We improve their conditions. We are giving them safety kits, which is life jackets, radios, marine radios, etc. So they can actually perform their work safely. And at the same time, we work with the fisher associations, not only the 40 fishers from the program, but all the other fishers that are on the community. Because what we do is we develop through a SWOT analysis, we develop a strategic development plan, sort of a roadmap of development of the community. And in the coming years, already now, but in the coming years, we will be implementing different activities that we have identified with them as key for their development. As I said, we have the fishmongers, we have the Women of the Sea and Mujer de Mar, which is a sister program of the Guardians of the Sea. And here we work exclusively with the women, empowering them, giving them voice. We can say now that fishmongers of SAL, they are represented within the Association of Fishers. And that was one of the big successes of this program. But we are working with these 30 fishmongers from the 3 different communities. We build their capacity. We improve their conditions. We give them material. We train them on safety and health, how to manage the fish, etc. And again, we did a roadmap with them, and we developed a strategic plan that we will implement. We are implementing, and we will implement in the coming years. And finally, we have the sustainable from the sea to the fish, from the sea to the plate program. And this program works with all the actors of the value chain and end up in the restaurant, end up in the consumers. So basically, we are ensuring that all these restaurants that are engaged with this program, so far it's 5 restaurants, they agree and they accept that they will only serve fish that are the right size and that are fish that come from sustainable fisheries. So basically, with these, we partner with the restaurants. We engage 13 fishers and 7 fishmongers that are 15 fish network. And we did some outreach. We had some campaigns. On the right side, you can see some posters that we put about the legal sizes of the fishes on every single bus stop of the island. We did some research on the fisheries stocks. We did some capacity building about current legislation, and we did some strategic partnership with law enforcement and other key stakeholders. And why this program is a success? I think that this program, the most important thing of this program is that we are working at the same time, but very specifically with all the actors of the communities. And we are connecting them at the same time. But also we are giving them voice. Until now, fishers and fishmongers, they were never heard. They were never, we never gave them importance. And now they feel they have something to say. And because of the project is very field-based, they see the results straight away. So that's why they are so engaged. And when you have the communities very engaged, all the stakeholders very engaged, things like this one in the picture happens. This is for Oceans Day. We organized the underwater cleaning with all the dive centers of the island of Sal, but also the Guardians of the Sea and the authorities. We all joined to clean the seabed of Sal Island. So this is one of the examples. There was many activities like this. We have also this example of this fishmonger that after receiving some participating in some workshop, she decided that she will invest her money in improving her conditions, her workspace. So now she's got all of this aluminum table, which is better for the safety and health of her products. And she proudly shared that on Facebook, saying that, you know, together with the Guardians of the Sea, the fishmongers, the Women of the Sea, are also working towards sustainable fisheries. But what is the present and what is the future of this bright spot? There are some challenges, and most of the challenges are related to the lack of participation of the authorities. There is no regulation that the regulations don't protect the, the artisanal fisheries. Instead, they actually are very focused on industrial and semi-industrial fisheries. Also, we have a lack of technical capacity and resources in our own NGO. We are a small NGO trying to do a lot of work. And what's next? What's our next steps? We are already setting up some national networks for sustainable fishing initiatives. For instance, the program Gardens of the Sea is now in several islands, so we are trying to join a force. We also want to start reducing the bycatch and the wildlife and human conflict on artisanal fisheries, which is also present. And we need to give tools to the fishers to solve those problems that they have now. And we are working towards the co-management of marine protected areas and the implementation of no-take zones in these marine protected areas. And as you can see on this right side, we have this paint that a local artist did in one of the communities that says in Creole, "The future of fisheries in our hands." So this is our final, our take home message. Thank you very much. Again, I'm gonna stay around just in case you have some questions, but you can always contact us on the website, by email, on following us on our social media. We're gonna be happy to share our experience, and we are hoping that we can help other NGOs in other countries to implement similar programs and to repeat the success of our project. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Albert. I don't know what anyone else, but you could sign me up to be a guardian of the sea. Maybe I'll start the Trinidad chapter when I get home. So next we move from Cabo Verde to Jamaica in the Caribbean Sea with Dr. Natania Lamen, a climate adaptation specialist with the Nature Conservancy. She is working on a resilience island project for the Caribbean Division, and under this project she works with governments, partners, and communities to protect Jamaica and other Caribbean islands against the impacts of climate change by promoting the use of coastal habitats to reduce risks, as well as implementing sustainable development plans that prioritize nature. So a whole of society approach. She also volunteers with the Jamaica Red Cross and is at the Adventist Disaster Relief Agency and enjoys traveling, reading, and playing tennis. Natania.
Thanks a lot, Jabal. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me. Like Jabal said, I'm Natania. I'm working with the Nature Conservancy on the Resilient Islands project here in Jamaica. So today I'd like to share with you about a resilient Old Harbor and how we're using nature-based solutions to adapt to climate change. Our project is a part of the International Climate Initiative and a partnership between the Nature Conservancy and the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And locally, we're partnering with national societies. So in Jamaica, we're doing that with Jamaica Red Cross. Next slide, please. So Old Harbor Bay is one of the largest fishing villages in Jamaica. However, its ecosystems and its people are under severe threats. The marine and coastal resources, specifically such as the coral reefs or mangroves, beaches and keys, they support local economies and therefore they provide overall prosperity for thousands of persons, not just within Old Harbor Bay itself, but adjoining communities. So for example, our mangroves act as nurseries for juvenile marine creatures and fish, but our fisher folks also use it as shelter in the event we have storms or hurricanes. Next slide, please. However, issues such as poverty, overfishing, and even unsustainable and damaging fishing practices, high rates of coastal erosion. On our screen, we're seeing a drone image of what the community looks like, and we're seeing some wave attenuating devices in the foreshore, which was implemented by the government to help with some of the coastal erosion. But we're also experiencing flooding and compounded impacts from the operation of several industries within the space. In the further foreground of the section, you'll see a few of our power plants that are operating within the space. There's also the threats from climate change, and of course all of this is threatening the very existence of community members, and they're putting their lives and livelihood at risk. Next slide, please. So using the Resilient Islands approach, where we combine the use of science, policy, resource mobilization, and partnerships, we carried out extensive assessments within the space. And we did this in partnership with the Jamaica Red Cross, key government entities, stakeholders, private sector, and community members themselves. So for example, under science, we carried out ecological assessment to understand the coastal and marine ecosystems and how these interact with the vulnerabilities that exist. We did vulnerability assessments with the Jamaica Red Cross. For policy, we looked at the mainstreaming of disaster risk reduction, climate change adaptation, and nature-based solution. And we believe this will help us to scale our project because we're able to facilitate discussion with government as to how we could meet international commitments such as national adaptation plans, national determined commissions, or even fulfill our Paris Agreement. Better yet, it will help us to see what comes from this COP and why we're here. The other significant part of what we're doing is financing. We need to be able to continuously mobilize resources within our community, and we're doing this in partnership with the Jamaica Red Cross. Next one, please. The RI for us examines what is at the intersection of people and nature. Can you just hit it one more time, please? This intersection is good because we need to look at it not for the sake of nature, but for the sake of people. How can we save lives? How can we avoid damages? After all, as Caribbean and small island developing states, our very economies are at risk to climate change. So to do this and to be able to understand the threats that exist, we started with stakeholder engagement up front. We identified key partners that are operating within the space, key government entities, and we continuously engage them and our community members. So using a collaborative approach, we're able to develop community resilience action plans, also a portfolio of projects that tackle the issues that we unearthed during the assessments. So though our portfolio was centered around nature because we're using nature-based solution, we emphasize the collaborative community-based approach. So we had to look at underlying issues of poverty, health, livelihoods, and of course these are issues that are pertinent to the community. Once we began to use that approach and began to have continued community engagement, what we realized is that we had increased awareness around our ecosystems, the services they provide, and the benefits to community members. But community members began to adjust how they interact with ecosystems, how they harvest ecosystems. They began to implement better sustainable practices, and also interaction between individual and community improved. We had better sanitation practices as well. But what we found was most important is that we had an increase in willingness to take action by our community members. Next one, please. So how can this bright spot be scaled? What are some of the things we need to consider? Three main things for us. We think that there needs to be sustainability. We need funding. We need financing to build capacity, create enabling conditions, and to, like I said, mainstream nature-based solutions with disaster risk reduction and climate change. And this, we believe, could be done through supporting laws, policies, and legislative framework. We also need to be able to change mindsets, something that is pretty hard to do. But this could be done through engagement and education. And of course, this takes time. But we believe once we empower our communities, we'll be able to increase their awareness and therefore their willingness to take action. This is highly complex though, and as such, we link it to another issue that we believe is paramount in this situation, systems thinking. NBS is a long-term solution, and therefore it requires a programmatic approach, not just project-based like what we've been doing over time in our islands. And we also recognize that NBS is not the only silver bullet, and as such it must be combined with other strategies. Our islands need circular economies that are going to benefit our fisher folks, improve food security. So if we look to COVID, for example, it has taught us that we need to do more. Governments weren't doing enough to protect our people. People are still dying. So how therefore can we be better? How could we do better? And we think this is achieved through systems thinking. That is understanding the complexities and the complementarities at play. The Resilient Islands approach, which is the use of science, policy, and partnerships, as well as financing, can be scaled. And we believe this is a good model that could be used. And we also think that together, people and nature can thrive. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Natanya. And thanks for just stressing how this is a long game and there are no quick fixes and bandages that you could just put over it. Okay, we're going back to the AIS region to Mauritius. Sorry. Runolf is the acting officer in charge of the association. He has been the education officer for the 19 years, last 19 years, working with the fisher communities, teachers, and the school kids all around the island on Shoal Rodriguez work. This includes the setting up of 4 northern marine reserves and the southeast marine protected area in the south. Other works include the setting up of octopus fishery, closed seasons, closing this octopus hunting season, banning of plastic bags and single-use plastic on the island in collaboration with the Rodriguez Regional Assembly. Runolf?
Good morning, everyone. So, like I was saying, I'm the acting officer in charge of social rights. So, through the project that we're discussing, it's we targeted a village in the north, Bejno. It's like the North Bay villages. And through this project, we had different things we had to do, like do the Cva assessment, support livelihood activities, address water shortage, as it is a really, really big problem here on the island, and then transfer all these lessons to the government. Next slide, please. So the village in the village no villages, they have around 300, 350 inhabitants there, and they are mainly fishermen. So they are big part of the villagers there. They are fishermen, and they depend mostly on that. Also there, since it's like a remote village, like the level of education there is a bit low. And for this project, we had new things that we showed them. Next slide. So for this project, we targeted 16 families, which represent about 15% of the village. We had 54 people present in the project, like 15 men, 17 women, and 22 children. So it's targeted the families. So through the CVA, next slide, with the CVA assessment, we had some really good work with population there, and we also, through the maps that you see on the screen, we saw the places that are really, really vulnerable to coastal change and climate change. So we did some maps to see which part of really affected parts. The CVA, we gave data, the report to the government, and through this data, it helped them in their policy. So right now, there's some construction work being done around the coast there. So we have a bridge that is being built to help against like big flooding, because when there's heavy rain and flooding, part of this part of a village is not accessible because the water cover the roads and everything. So through this assessment, which was innovative and the first one that an NGO did in Rodrigue, the policy, the government did new policies for that. Next. And one other part of the project was alternative livelihood, like poultry farming. And all 16 families, we gave them around 5 chicken each. And for the project, we saw that certain families got more than the others, like 1 or 2 people had even 20 to 50 hens at the end of the project. And it really helped them as it raised their monthly income really well. Because also with eggs that was what we got from the hens, this helped them in for their kids going to school. A lot of families use eggs in the morning or for the kids. And instead of going out to buy one eggs for 7 rupees here, we already had it at home, which helped them in their income. Next. The next part of the project was, like I said before, we had an issue of water shortage here in Rodrigues. So part of the project was to give them the capacity to do rainwater harvesting. So each family has got a water tank, like you see in the picture, and the thing is, the families participated in building the tank. They were there and helped, like you see in the first picture. It's the beneficiary is working on it and giving his part of the effort in the project. That part of the project, we had 38 families that benefited for the rainwater harvesting. Next. Another part of the project was to get sheep and pig rearing. Through that project, 15 other families preferred to have sheep, and one of them preferred to have piglets. She preferred piglets as she has already an history with some pigs and know how to do it. So they received 60 sheep between the 15 beneficiaries. And the good news in that is that certain of the chiefs were pregnant and got new ones a few like weeks or months later. So they really benefited from that one. Next. Another part of the project, but it wasn't really in there, but with talks with Commissioner of Agriculture, Dr. Ravina and his team came and gave different talks and training to the beneficiaries on alternative feeds for the livestock. So through the training, he showed them how to get alternative feeds directly from around them. So we use readily available weeds and other things, and how to prepare it so that they don't spend a lot of money out on feeds for the animals. So they can use readily available products for these animals. And normally, since last year, the price of animal feeds have been going up, especially with the COVID problem. The price is going through the roof. And with these alternative feeds, it's one way to help them to mitigate all these problems. Next. So the challenges that we had through this project is the project was funded under Cva, and at the end of the project, like the money we finished and gave everything, so funding was finished, and that's a big problem here. A lot of project did not work because after the end of the project, it wasn't sustainable. But through this project, even if funding was finished, the fishermen, the beneficiaries, are still working with the animals and things. So it's still going on. And specific challenge is understaffing. So our NGO, we have only 5 staff, and it's not enough to cover all the projects that we are doing right now. We also don't have enough funding for them. And this project, it was done in the Bejno villages, which is directly linked to one of the 4 marine reserves that we have in the north of Rodrigues. So the problem here is that we don't have enough funding to replicate this kind of project through all of the reserves on the island. But the good news is we had another project with GF and GP, UNDP, for the last 2 years, that replicated this project on another part of the island. So right now we have two marine reserve that has been directly catered for the training and activities like that. So all the beneficiaries will give them also training in how to manage their budget, how to also most of the fishermen they don't know how to read and write, so we give them also literacy training to help them for that. Next slide. So what specific recommendation that we like to make is like policymakers need to take more into account that NGOs need co-funding for salaries. Most of the project that is going on around the island, uh, it does take care of funding for salaries of the staff to do the job to get the project till the end. So maybe if policymakers can cover these parts so that the NGO work really well with the amount of funding from other funders, this will help greatly. Also, for all these projects, like different policies can be put at the front to help different communities. So we at Shores, we have seen that for a project to work, we have to really integrate the beneficiaries from the start of a project. So while devising it, like implementing, monitoring, and doing things, we have to be really in touch with the communities, the beneficiaries, as we've seen different projects that fail because they didn't uh, see that it wasn't what the beneficiaries wanted. So for it to work, we have to work with them since the beginning, like creating the project, but really cater for what they need. Also, global and national policymakers should create really good environment for building resilience of communities. So different project here that we do has been funded by the SPGF throughout the years, and we really like to thank UNDP for that because we've seen that certain project needs to continue to be sustainable, and a few other beneficiaries we have, they can be found in one or two different projects because they want to continue and make it a success. So for all these funding that we have with UNDP, uh, we really thank them for that because it really helped us and the beneficiaries in Rodrigues to make things happen and for it to really work well. So I think it's mostly this, and if you have any question later on, don't hesitate. So HB Jeff has really helped us with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ronald, for what I think was a really good lesson on that maybe we can all take into ours. Okay, so we have to show you away from the Pacific, or rather, the Pacific has come to us here in old, dreary Glasgow. So all the way from Palau is Kevin Misibiru. Kevin's list of accolades are many, but let me just give you a few of the key highlights. He's the program implementation manager of the Rare Fish Forever Palau. He's the chairman of the board, Financial Institutions Commission of the Republic of Palau, co-founder of the Alliance of Climate Resilient Island Societies. He's an avid fisherman with his two daughters. He tries at photography. I don't know how well he tries, but he tries, which is important. He's currently exploring haiku in the Paluan language, so conserving cultural heritage, and he enjoys Chinese calligraphy as a pastime. Don't we all? So, Kevin, without further ado, you can take the floor. Oh yes, let me get the mic for you. It's on already.
Oh, thank you, Jabal, for the warm welcome in this very cold weather. And thank you, Ambassador, for welcoming us as brothers and sisters to provide the context for our shared challenges, solutions, and hopes. So with the support of the German Federal Ministry of the Environment through the International Climate Initiative, or ICI, Rare Fish Forever is working to inspire local communities to implement sustainable fisheries and revitalize coastal communities. Palau is the very westernmost Pacific island before you reach Indonesian Pacific, and Rare has begun working there to implement Fish Forever. Rare now works in 8 countries over 1,000 communities using a replicable model rooted in behavior science to inspire women and men fishers to practice sustainable fishing practices and to be involved in the management of those fisheries. We are also pleased to announce that we now have a global network of local leaders that have pledged to prioritize the protection and the revitalization of their coastal fisheries. This network is called the Coastal 500, and with assistance and support of Bloomberg Philanthropies' Vibrant Ocean Initiative, this network continues to grow. These partnerships of local leaders and international partners has resulted in over 4 million hectares of coastal ocean water being put under sustainable management. Fish Forever works by incentivizing fishers to register and obtain fisher IDs, enabling them to be recognized as fishery stewards, to assign rights to fishing areas, and to understand who is fishing where and what they're catching. Ultimately, this instills a sense of ownership in the health and protection of these fishing grounds. Fish Forever also advocates respecting fishing regulations that both women and men promulgate in partnership with local leaders and national government. This includes the use of indigenous knowledge backed by data and science, and through participatory mapping of managed access areas plus reserves. Fish Forever also removes barriers to allow men and women fishers to report their catch and enables management decisions to be based in real-time catch data. These and a suite of tools that include household surveys that reveal socioeconomic data, development of a pride campaign, climate change vulnerability assessments, site-specific ecological data, and a suite of other tools for practitioners, implementation managers, decision makers are all made available through an online portal through the RARE system. But why, why is ensuring sustainable coastal fisheries important? Studies in Palau have revealed that 70% fishers perceive that 70% of their fisheries are in decline. And science also reveals that this is just as true. But this is not just in Palau, but is a prevalent status in many Asia-Pacific countries. Over 1 billion people rely on these coastal fisheries. 85% of the world's coral and 100% of all mangroves are in coastal areas within 12 nautical miles from shore. Overfishing and habitat degradation is common. Communities that rely on these coastal fisheries are among the poorest and most vulnerable, and they are often undervalued and thus are not well managed or resourced. On top of these challenges, climate change is also impacting small-scale fisheries on a much wider scale. Brothers and sisters, coastal fisheries across the Asia-Pacific region are facing the challenges of climate change now. The science is telling us that within my lifetime, 40% of fish biomass from coastal fisheries will disappear. This is due through acidification, overfishing, habitat degradation, and unsustainable development. Climate change causing extreme weather patterns through drought and the resulting upland fires cause sedimentation to further impact these coastal fisheries. Super typhoons and cyclones will continue to wreck key habitats and fisheries. This resulting unbalanced ecosystem will see invasive species run rampant and the increase in competition for these fishing grounds. But Fish Forever and other efforts, as we've heard today, are combating this challenge. There is massive support for the management of open water, male-dominated fisheries. But coastal fisheries need just as much, if not more, support. We simply all cannot live off pelagic fisheries. In Palau, it is recognized that both men and women both have a role in the transfer of knowledge and indigenous ways to protect those fisheries and are recognized as stewards of this information. 6 years ago, Palau enacted the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. Science is telling us that 83% of global carbon cycle is circulated through the ocean, and the ocean can sequester up to 21% of our carbon. It's fitting that in Palau, the Marine Sanctuary calls for the protection of 80% and the development of domestic fisheries for that 20% of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. But in keeping with that notion that men and women both play a role in the fisheries management, mangroves are also a key important regulator for climate change. And the support that goes to these pelagic open water fisheries needs to also be replicated for women fishers and their coastal fisheries near shore. So what has Fish Forever been able to achieve in Palau? As I mentioned in the start, the suite of tools that RARE has made available has happened in Palau, where two local communities have signed on to be members of the Coastal 500 and have signed on to develop managed access area plus reserves. These two governors have continued to provide that drive to ensure that they continue to protect these vulnerable fisheries for the future. They are also signed on and we have worked to create all this data, including the household survey data, the climate change vulnerability assessments, larval disbursement data, and have loaded all of these into the RARE data portal, allowing practitioners and local fishermen access to that data to help in management decisions. Our work with the national government has also been fruitful. We agreed on a partnership with the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Environment to create the first national fisher registration for Palau. We aim to register every single fisherman, to know how many fishers are registered, to know their catch effort and catch value, and we ensured that we use the socioeconomic survey and that data on how to engage these fishermen. I want to slowly leave this presentation with this symbol that is depicted on our community meeting houses. It's called the Troil Blue. Ndalmiya kalilak lukuk, simply translated, always plan for tomorrow. This symbol is our logo for our national campaign to register fishers. It has two heads, one male and one female, sharing one body. It embodies the way Palauans make decisions. There are many ideas and solutions, but after we make that decision, we must act in unison. We must be cohesive in our efforts to protect our fisheries. And within that circle, it's an interesting story. I will indulge, but there are many symbols of different issues that must be addressed. When to plant, when to harvest, what to do during drought. And so I think it's a key symbol, especially here in COP26. Ultimately, there are many wonderful solutions to our most pressing problems, but I want to continue to challenge us to use indigenous knowledge and to empower resource owners, local practitioners, and coastal communities. As brothers and sisters, we are all standing in the front line of climate change. And as Ambassador graciously began this context, I will borrow from his wonderful example. You can teach, if you give a person a fish, he'll eat for a day. If you teach a person a fish, he may eat longer. But if you give that fisherman a seat at the table, well, wonders will happen. I will leave you with this QR code. If you are interested to learn more, this will take you to our Rare Fish Forever portal site. And thank you very much for the opportunity.
like it was a sobering reality check, but also a message of hope. So thank you for that. And so we're going to the panel discussion now, and I think we're running out of time, so I'm going to quickly go through these introductions. First, we have Ambassador Janine Felson of Belize. She's also the lead finance coordinator for AOSIS and just a all-round boss. So I think that covers everything. Angelique, who's a young boss, Kat, and Thompson, who is the United Nations Secretary General, Special Envoy for the Ocean, and he's appointed this position. So if they make a position for you, you have to be a boss as well. So Peter, can I invite you to have a seat with the panelists? And of course, all our Bright Spot presenters are on the panel as well. So they'll be taking part in this session, which I think is very important. It's very important. A seat at the table, as Kevin said. So I'm going to start the questions off. My first question is primarily for my new panelists. The three of you, I think, sit from very interesting perspectives and positions. And I just want to know what were your first impressions and like, what did you think of these bright spots? What really stood out for you? And maybe we could start with Janine, and then Ambassador Thompson, and then Angelique.
No, not COVID safe because I just dropped the mask on the floor. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here, and what a wonderful set of presentations. And thank you, Ambassador Webson, for that really thought-provoking introduction as well. I think really what stands out is that there's a very good case for locally led responses to climate change. I mean, we're seeing this here. I felt as though I was seeing Belize. Lost my mic. I felt as though I was seeing Belize in every single one of these presentations, and I'm thinking, why isn't this being replicated much more widely than just in little rooms in little specific areas with just island people? You know, we need to have this much broader audience. And I think every one of these presentations gave the solutions. They spoke to the need to ensure that there's financing, which is critical. Money matters, but where money goes matters even more. And one of the presenters, I think the Jamaican presenter, mentioned the need to have this systems thinking, because even as good as the Jeff Small Grants Program is, it's a small pot of money. And it takes a lot for these various actors to bring forward a project. And if you have to bring forward a project for each step of the way, you're basically exhausting their capacity which they could easily be using towards expanding their programs and making it even better. So there's a strong case for locally led processes, whether it's adaptation or mitigation or sustainable management of fisheries or sustainable development, whatever. And there's a very strong case that there needs to be an enabling environment that facilitates this. And I know you have limited time, so just one last thing is just ingenuity. We need imagination, and this is imagination. This is really, I mean, the banks think of imagination as risk. And I guess if I gave my 14-year-old the opportunity to think up something, I probably would think it's risky. But give them the potential and look at what can be achieved. Thank you very much. Oh my God.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. And thank you very much to the organizers for really, you know, this is a good end to the day and a good end to the week after I've been sitting in a negotiating room waiting for text. But I'm really appreciative of Ambassador Webson's framing that there needs to be SIDS solution for SIDS. And I think at the heart of that is really an approach of sustainability, because solutions are sustainable once it is locally led, co-designed, designed by the very people who have identified the challenge, and we can see ownership. It isn't a matter of people flying in or people coming in with a solution and saying, this is what you should do in your country. It's really the people themselves coming up with a solution, and you can see the ownership, right? It lasts longer than just a short project period. And very much like Ambassador Felsen, I also saw Seychelles in all of these. I was sat there going, we're facing very similar challenges. I could connect with every challenge that they were talking about. But I also connected on another level because being the CEO of the Seychelles Conservation and Climate Adaptation Trust, I was like, these are great projects that we could fund in Seychelles. And of course, the trust is driven by applications from the local communities. And I started thinking of knowledge exchange. I started thinking of how are we bringing people together to understand the different solutions that have been created and generated, so that SIDS can learn from other SIDS. And at the same time, and I know there's close enough platforms of this, but thinking about how we're bringing all these SIDS solutions on one platform, so that as a person in a small island developing state, thinking about small-scale fisheries, you're clicking a button and you're getting all these solutions, and thinking about which one would work for your country, and of course adopting and adapting. But most importantly, I love that the fact that every slide had a lessons learned. It really makes the point that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. There are lessons learned. We don't all need to make the same mistakes over. We can learn from each other. And lastly, to say that I think it's extremely important that we find a way to institutionalize knowledge sharing. I love this bright spots. I think we need to find a way to not necessarily, just make it around events or podcasts. I mean, I love it. I'm one that follows it diligently. But making sure we can institutionalize it within processes. Yeah. So that would be my last comment. Thank you. Ambassador.
Thanks, Angelique. Lovely to see you again. Janine, lovely to see you again. Aubrey, always inspirational being your presence. So many in this room worked with over the years. Sainavoti, who led the charge when Fiji was president of G77, the United Nations. So here we are. This COP26 to me is a different COP. I think we've seen a sea change. Previously, we were battling to try and convince the world that there was a precipice approaching over which we were all going to fall, and we were being white-anted. The small island developing states were always at the forefront, but we were being white-anted. There were big countries which were trying to persuade everybody it was all a hoax. You know who they were. But now every one of those countries has got a target for net zero. However realistic they might be, we don't know, but at least they're now all committed. There are no naysayers on that score anymore. So we've moved on. The conversation now at this COP is all about what are we going to do about it? What are the solutions? And the good news there is that nature-based solutions, which we've been pushing forward from the SIDS for so long, we were like the kind of teddy bears at the door that everybody was sort of waving at. Not now. We're in the room. Everybody wants a piece of nature-based solutions. So that's another big, big change. Look, I just want to remind us why we're here. We're here for our kids. That's why I'm wearing this. And my Tongan friend, Chris Taufua, and he's got a little kid in London. I've got a little granddaughter living with me in London. And we dreamed up this idea in London. We tried to sell it to UNFCCC that everybody should wear one of these badges saying who they're the father of or the mother of or the uncle of or the auntie of, the grandfather, that all of us should have this. And we tried to persuade Patricia Espinosa on this. She was sympathetic. But the idea is to make it a voluntary thing. So anyway, Chris and I have decided we're going to go back and rethink so that when we come to Egypt, you're going to see a lot of people wearing this sort of thing. We're going to try and do it through social media so that your conscience makes you want to come with one of these, right? Because when you're wearing one of these, it changes all your priorities. It's not about little victories that you're winning at any particular conference. It's just like, what are we going to do for our kids? We're condemning them to a 3-degree world at the moment. That's WMO, that's not me, that's the WMO. Our weather people are saying our kids, Rosie here, she's going to be 80 at the end of this century. WMO says 3 degrees or 2.7. Either way, it's a world on fire. It's villages flattened by hurricanes, it's mudslides, digging out your relatives from the mud, etc. That's not what we want to condemn our kids to. So number one, change of mindset required in that regard still. You know, we've got to stop thinking about ourselves and start thinking more about our kids and grandkids. The other reason that we're here, of course, is to join the fight to bring those GHG emissions down. And AOSIS and the SIDS have always been at the forefront of that battle. And while we have succeeded, as I've just described, in a major way, the battle is far from over. We're still in a very, very dangerous place as a species, but particularly for us from the small island developing states. So that battle, AOSIS, Mr. Chairman, Aubrey, my mate, we don't give up on that. We've still got big battles to fight on that score, but at least it's a different phase of the battle now. So that's the encouraging thing, because all these things are a process. I'm sure you agree. You're old enough to know that progress is a process. The third big thing that I came up here for to Glasgow was to try and move the climate finance needle in the direction of the sustainable blue economy. Why? The sustainable blue economy is the future of our children and kids and our grandchildren. And that's, you know, not just the medicines, not just the renewable energy, it's nutrition. And I've just come from a fantastically transformational meeting in my own mind about seaweed. And, you know, seaweed is just got potential for really changing the world, that transformation of consumption and production. Please think about seaweed and learn what you can, because I learned so much today, whether you were talking about fuel or nutrition. And this is something that, you know, as Great Ocean states, that we have huge resources on. It's not just our women doing seaweed farming along the coastline, which is going to be something we're going to invest in and which we're going to grow from Tanzania to Fiji. Not just that, it's going out into our great EEZs, into the ocean and finding the places where the nutrients are at their richest and starting to grow the seaweeds, which will be in huge demand. From what I heard today, I'm absolutely 100% convinced on that. So sustainable blue economy is our future, and we're well placed to benefit from that. Again, thinking ahead to our kids, what are they going to be doing? They're going to be farming the sea. And, you know, in all this, it's about continuity, it's about passing the baton on to the younger generation, and that's one thing we're not short of in talent in the SIDS. It's just so impressive to listen to these panelists that we've just listened to now, Local Solutions. I want to leave you with one thought to all you guys out there that are working so hard on that, is that if you have a look at the UN Decade of Ocean Science, which all of us have approved, 194 member states set that up, because we need the science to do the planning, to convince the money to flow in the direction of where we want it to flow, which is to a sustainable blue economy. For the pillars of the UN Decade of Ocean Science, there are 5 pillars, and one of them is that it must be rooted in indigenous and local knowledge. That the sharing of that, the supporting of that, and the funding of that. So you're well placed with your local knowledge and your local projects. And to conclude on that same vein, in terms of a message of hope for the good work that you're doing out there in your local projects. And when I started off in the early 70s as a rural development officer in Fiji, right through to when I was president of the executive board of UNDP, I heard one refrain from the people that had the money. Peter, we've got so much money. What's wrong with you, you know? Where are your projects? Well, that's still the same today. And as I said earlier in my remarks, nature-based solutions are now the darlings of what we've been hearing at this COP. That means all the big money is going to be wanting to go into nature-based. They all want to be able to show that in their annual reports and all the rest, right? So what I'm saying to you is the most important thing you can do, whether you're sitting there in northern Mauritius or wherever you were and wondering where you're going to get your next dollar, write up a project. Write up a project. Get your projects together. Bundle them up. There is no shortage of money. It's just supposedly there's a shortage of projects. So, you know, don't think there's no funding coming the way for your seaweed project or whatever it's going to be. Just get it written down, formalize it, and get it out there to the world, because there's supposedly all the trillions of dollars are heading our way. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ambassador. So let's pass the baton back to our Bright Spot presenters. I have a question for you all in terms of, I think Angelique mentioned that community buy-in was really important. So I just wanted to know, because I imagine it's unique for each of your interventions. So I wanted to find out more, what were the specific things you all did to get that buy-in from the community, and what were their trials and errors in terms of figuring out how to engage with the community, because not every community is the same. So I just wanted your quick reflections on that. And we can start with our virtual participants. So maybe Runolf?
Yep. For us, it was really the communication that was really important, because we started the project a few years ago, and through different little challenge and problem. So we had to really, like, Shoals has been doing work on different village around the island, and one of the things that was said during our talks with the villagers from the Bejino, the people there, asked us the question why we kept jumping the village, like we jump from them to someone else, because we keep doing things around their village and but not in the village. The answer was that that villagers was really challenging for us, because there's like loads of people there that don't want outsiders to come work with them, and a lot of people there were poachers. So if we wanted to do some conservation work with poachers, that's like a different world. So the solution was like really discussion. We went to them, we do loads of talk, and the thing is, you can't do a talk with all the 500 people or 100 people. You have to do small different talks with them, because if we go out with like 100 people in the meeting, even if 99 of them are for the project, if there's one of them that's against it, he will manage to turn everyone off the project. So our solution was to go and talk with different groups. So like small, like in the small schools there, with a community village group, like with youth groups and things like that. So we had to target all the different groups, talk to them, and then create something up. That's the biggest problem we had. So through the meetings, we had a few poachers who came and said that we just want to stop them fishing in the seawater. So through the different talks, we told them that no, we don't want to stop you fishing. We are just trying to bring new solution for you to keep getting fish. The answer was like the marine reserve. it's not to stop you fishing, it's just to keep you getting fish for the years coming. If you take care of a reserve and protect it and enforce it. So discussion and interacting with all the stakeholders in the village, that's the biggest part that work for us.
Yeah. So it's how you tell the message. Albert, your thoughts? I don't know if you're connected.
So, yeah, I think. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So as Donald was saying, I think that the key for the success of this project is talking, is sitting with the people for many hours and many days and talking before starting or before designing your project. Because one of the usual mistakes is that you design a project based on what you think or based on what the the donor of the funding agency think or wants to do. But we never. But that's a mistake. You need to sit with people. You need to listen to the problem, and then you need to design the project with them. And that's, I think, in our case, that's what it made it a success. To sit with the people and to know and to understand what was their problems, what they think it was the solutions, and then from there we designed a project and everybody followed. So yeah, this is I think that was key in our case, and I think that's we need to always think and base have this approach for any kind of local initiative.
Thanks. Kevin, do you want to chime in quickly if you can?
Sure. Just really quickly, I think everything that's mentioned is very important, especially indigenous knowledge, as Honorable Peter Thompson said. There is no shortage of projects. I do feel that we need to continue to empower our youth and give them that sense of climate justice, because we keep saying that they're going to be facing these challenges. So if we don't bring them up to speed now, there's going to be that disconnect. And where's that project going to come next? We need that innovation, and we need the youth to come up with that innovation. And just wanted to add that.
Thank you. We're running a little late, but I really want to ask one more question because I think it's really important and it combines a lot of the questions I had here. But it's really because I think Ambassador Peter talked it. He talked about how there's so much money available and just write up the project, and it seems like a disconnect because some people said that it's not a real systems approach. So I just want to get your thoughts, Ambassador, first, and everyone actually, about like how do we solve this disconnect and like how do we make the money actually more accessible? We hear about the 100 billion or we hear different figures, but people are still struggling to get that sustainable, predictable funding. So I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, I could give you a negotiator's response and talk to you about process, but I think it boils down to political will. That's what we need. That's what will make a difference. Because we could sit and put our heads to the table and write every beautiful process decision that you could think about, but it won't matter if there's no will to change the way things are done. And I guess that's what we have to push for. That's what Ambassador Webson and all the leaders are advocating for from the small island developing states. Hello, we've been saying this for 30 years, and we continue to hear an affirmation of our problems, but no operationalization of that affirmation. Thanks.
And Angelique, well, you've been in the system. Maybe you can give some advice in terms of how they can do it with how things currently are, like what they can do, maybe, to help.
Okay. So maybe I'll give a perspective from sort of on the ground perspective. You know, managing a trust fund. Yeah, you know, it's one thing to have money available. It's something completely different to have it accessible. Completely different. Just a few examples of what we've done, but also reflecting on some of the presentations. So, for example, in Seychelles, we've you can apply in your local language, right? You can send in your application in Seychellois Creole. We've removed that barrier. We rather spend money translating it into English to satisfy the World Bank, who needs to read it afterwards, than keep a language barrier from those who want to access the funding. The other thing to think about is we cover salaries, for example. We acknowledge that it's people's time. They're putting a lot of effort. We continue depending on these volunteer-driven initiatives and then wonder why they end right after or it's not sustained. And two last points. Two last points I would say is there needs to be more trust between the donor and the beneficiary. I'm putting it in inverted commas because. Hello?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I'm putting it in inverted commas because it should be an equal partnership. It shouldn't be always seen as this donor recipient relationship. So there needs to be more trust there. It cannot be a matter of always thinking, oh, it's a group of young people coming up with solutions, feeling very distrustful of their innovations and what they're thinking of doing. And then the last point would be bridging the KPIs, right? The key performance indicators. A lot of banks, a lot of donors have their own KPIs, and really making sure that those actually match with impact on the ground. So I'd say those are a couple of things that we really need to think about. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, I don't know if any of my presenters want to chime in and maybe say what needs to be done from your vantage point, because we want to hear what you have to say about this and what can make it easier for you to do your work. So I don't know if virtually, and if any hands are up.
Yeah, I could chime in here, Jabal. It's interesting that on one side we're hearing that funding is available, but I'm not sure that redounds at some of the small island states level, because we have these repeat impacts from storms and hurricanes yearly, and we have the same story we've been telling over the last 30 years, that we're having to divert funds to deal with that disaster response. But also, when the funds become available, there are certain strategic plans that are already at play that our government tend to focus on. So we'd want to say we need more funding for some of our small islands. Yes, we need the political will, but we also need access to a bigger pool of funding that is going to address our strategic needs within our unique Caribbean island, not just Caribbean, but island states, that sometimes differ from what the donors want, and it sometimes differ from what the funding is available for. But I'm thinking a programmatic approach will help that. So when our donors and those multilateral agencies sit to provide funding, if they could begin to change the narrative from project-based to program-based, but also what Angelique said as well, begin to what their key indicators are, so it aligns more with what our needs are on the ground. I think that's also a good place where we could start.
Anyone else?
If I can come in here. I think from the small grants program side, I also wanted to say that similar to Angelique, I think the issue of finance is really to reach out to the community level is the key challenge as well as opportunity. I think many of these climate finance as well as other finance has been stopping at the national level in many ways. And I think what Small Grants Program and others are really trying to do is to reach out to the local community, particularly even to the remote and rural community. And to do that, I think the first step really for capacity building and awareness raising with the community themselves, and they themselves come up with their solutions and build on the projects based on their traditional knowledge, their solutions, I think is a really key point. And we also accept with local languages, sometimes like video proposals and other mechanisms, so that we can even accept non-verbal, basically non-written format proposals, so that we can reach out to really a diverse set of communities like indigenous peoples and women's group who are illiterate. So I think these type of platform to be developed and a decentralized mechanism making sort of appraisal and reviews at the local level is really important, and we strive to do that with partners like all of you on the ground. Thank you.
I'm not sure, Kevin, you wanted to say something? Okay. Well, a lesson learned here is that we need to manage our time better in these events. So I really sorry that we had to leave the panel discussion, which I think was really heating up. But I know Ambassador Thomas, you have things to do. So I really wanted you to to come to the floor and really wrap up for us and summarize and see what's happening and maybe just close us out one time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jabal, and good evening to everyone. And thank you for your invitation to be here this evening. I notice everybody has their technology, and I have mine. My one is this one. It's proven and chosen technology. Yeah, I think, I know it's late, so I wouldn't want to take too long, but I believe what we heard this evening, this is really, I heard that this is a good end of the day. And I really believe that is true. When I am asked to do a respondent to any event like this, I try to look for things that I need to take issues with. And of course, there is nothing that have been said here this evening that I can take an issue with. I think I agree with everything. So that is all I have to say, really. But that being aside, I believe that it was that way because it started well. It started well with Ambassador Webson indicating very clearly that those solutions, those local island solutions, were by ourselves, for ourselves, and invoking the issue of our own self-determination. I think that's where it started. Proven and scalable solutions. We heard that also. Our fundamental issue this evening was the issue of community, island community. And what we recognize is, I think this event here may be the best event, side event, that is happening around all of what we happen here. And islands will be doing that. And we heard from Ambassador Thompson about the event that he went to on islands, again, on the seaweed issue and so on. So I think we are running the show in the side events. And we are also running the show inside of the negotiation room, because this 1.5 is to stay alive. And Ambassador Felsen will tell you that very clearly. So that community, resilient community, that sustainable community is, again, a feature of the island's ecosystem. The issue of partnerships came up. Partnerships, again, by the Undersecretary, and the Samoa pathway was mentioned. Again, a demonstration of island leadership. We heard some very great examples of bright spots from Cape Verde, from Jamaica, Palau, Seychelles. You cannot take any issue with any of those. And again, the issue is skilling, and we talk about the financing. We notice also that a lot of the times we always lament the capacity constraints in islands and so on, and we always say we don't have capacity. But when we look very closely, we realize that we do have a lot of capacity. We may be capacity deficit in terms of our balance of payments, in terms of our economies. But in terms of vulnerability, we may have deficits. But in terms of really building a resilient society and working as a community, I think we're showing the world how to do those things. And this, again, is evident in some of those examples that we have. People and nature. We heard very clearly, why are we doing this? We're doing it for our kids. And I think this is a message that we need to take forward. We see some very good bright spots and marine ecosystems. And I like the question about fish forever. It is fish and food forever. This is really a very good name for that. So I want to stop here because I know it is very late. Nature-based solutions, I understand, is very, very sexy, as we heard from Ambassador. Everybody wants to be on that bandwagon. And we're happy about that because, again, it was one of those issues that islands were projecting for many, many, many years. And as we said, when we look at what is happening around all of the islands, that we are more alike than different. That came out very clearly. And then we don't need to reinvent the wheel. We could learn from each other, and we could share those experiences and sort of lessons. And this is exactly what an event like this has done tonight. And again, I agree that this is the best event that I've been to, and this is a very good end for this evening. So thank you very much, and let me thank all the presenters. I understand that I have to thank them because of the time. Thank all of those who are not here, who have left for other very important issues, and all who have participated in this very important and the most important side event in this conference. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Ambassador. And that's our show. Thanks, everyone, for being here. Thanks, virtual audience, if you're still here. Thanks, Rare. Thanks, Nature Conservancy. Thanks, SGP. Thank you, AOSIS. We can do it. Thank you, UNDESA. So this was really good. Thanks, all.
Bye to all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Great event.
Yeah, it's really awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good night and good evening for everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.